the article is a pretty good synopsis of a very large issue, and it's titled "Rethinking the Social Responsibility of Business." Milton Friedman, the famous economist from the University of Chicago, and John Mackey, Whole Foods president, and then T.J. Rogers from Cypress Semiconductor. So anyway, we could go a long time on this, I think, but I think this is a good article to do a little compare and contrast. And I think the first question I'd like to pose to the class, it starts with Milton Friedman. They reference a 1970 New York Times article that was often quoted. But should a business be concerned with more than making a profit? I think that's the first question that is posed there, and Milton Friedman answers that. And so I'm going to pose that to the class. Should a business be concerned with more than making a profit? What do you think about that? Any thoughts at all? Do you like what Milton Friedman had to say? Or do you not like what Milton Friedman had to say?
Well, it sounds like we're in the circle of trust here, so I'm feeling, pretty safe with this one. I like what Milton Friedman had to say in terms of, social responsibility of business is to make a profit. Kind of comparing that with some of the other statements later that they said, it's kind of got more of a social aspect to it. I think that people have a social aspect to them, but I don't think that the business should concern itself in necessarily social situations and applications, with their money. It's the investors who I believe, should be able to use their money after getting that return, that profit, in such a way to be socially responsible.
Other thoughts at all on that?
I actually like what John Mackey was saying I feel like it shouldn't just be businesses returning a profit, because there's a lot of stakeholders in a business. And so I think just looking at it to return the profit, and I think the quote he used, like the profit is not the end, but a means to an end, means taking all the shareholders into account, meaning the employees are just as important as the shareholders, and they're just as important as the community and all these other organizations together.
Good. I'm glad you mentioned that, because it really shows the two aspects. There's a stakeholder analysis, where we have many stakeholders, and I think Whole Foods, John Mackey, list out all the stakeholders, and they're all important to us. Okay, and we have to decide how we're going to meet all their needs, and we have to weigh and balance, as opposed to, I'll use Milton Friedman's view, is no, we worry about the investors and everybody else can take care of themselves. So I think those are the two positions there. And so I think that's a classic debate here on that. Other thoughts on those two positions here?
I guess I can chime in with what Joaquin mentioned when he touched on the 6 stakeholders. I think that Mackey refers to being let's see here, the customers, the team members, which means the employees, the investors, the vendors, communities, and the environment. So he does mention, I agree with Joaquin when he mentions that, John Mackey states that it's not, I guess, making a profit isn't the end, it's the process, or it's, I should find the quote before I start using my own words, but I like when he says that he doesn't believe in maximizing profits for the investors is the only acceptable justification for all corporate actions. The investors are not the only people who matter. And then he also follows it with saying that corporations can exist for purposes other than simply maximizing profits.
Good summary of Mackey's view.
I had a comment about Mackey. One thing I feel about what he's stating, I agree with it, but there is a social responsibility that goes beyond what he states in here. His quote is, "There is one and only one social responsibility of business, to use its resources and engage in activities designed to increase its profit so long as it stays within the rules of the game."
That's Friedman's quote.
That's Friedman's, yeah. I'm sorry, yes. And so with that being stated, I agree with that, but then you take into consideration the moral aspect of it, which can fall way out of line, as we've seen in various recent historical events. And So what's the gauge in that? I mean, I understand his point, and if everyone's playing on the same level moral playing field, I agree with it. But how do you couch the moral aspect of it is my question.
Yeah, and this idea of the rules of the game, this is something I thought that Friedman had a stronger argument if you're looking at like arguments and examples, but just to build off of that, what are the rules of the game? Are we just talking about what's lawful? Is it, a corporation can be for profit as long as they're working within lawful, or is there something beyond that? And one of the examples, as I was kind of ruminating on this, wanting to bring practical examples, is what's happened in the financial industry. Okay, if we're just about profit, like we're taking on risk with the hopes of gaining profits for our for people who are our shareholders, but at incredible risk to society, to the world. Like, if profit is the only bottom line within legality, I don't know, is there a problem with that?
Where I am is I feel as a believer, if I ran a business, I have a social responsibility. But I don't feel all businesses are run by believers. So standalone, do I feel a business has a social responsibility? I have a problem with the word responsibility. I don't think that they do. As a believer, I feel I do, but standalone as a business, do I feel a business does? I don't. I think it's smart business if they do. I think it's a competitive advantage if they do, but I don't think it's an obligation for them. I think they should choose where to spend the money. I do believe in the model of multiple stakeholders, not just the investors, because the investors choose who's running the party, right? And I can't have a good business without happy customers. I can't have happy customers without happy employees, and so forth. So yeah, I do believe we have to take care of all of the folks, but I guess I struggle with the word responsibility. That's where I am.
And you work for a public company, right?
I do.
Yes. And how does this play into, as an employee? Obviously, you're not making decisions about, I don't think about social responsibility of your company, but I mean, how do you see your role? I mean, you try and be more socially responsible, or you have to follow the guidelines that they say, or what?
Yeah. Well, I'm blessed because I am a believer, and my company, even though I'm sure there are at the higher up some believers, but as a public organization, to your point, they do support various worthwhile causes. So I'm happy they're doing it already. If they weren't, would I take more initiative at a local level to do something? I probably would.
Now, if they support something that you don't agree with or is against what you think, how do you handle that? I'm not going to give you specific examples because my examples are going to be different than yours, but...
Sure. Great question. I've been blessed that I haven't had to cross that bridge yet. Would I probably choose to abstain if it was something that was against my views? Yeah, I would. And do I think they would be supportive of that? Yes, I do think they would be.
So you think it's good for the corporation to make allowances for people? Hey, we're going to support this endeavor, but if you don't want to, no penalties. Yeah,
where I work, they've been great about allowing people to engage and involve themselves if they want to, but it's never obligatory, which I've appreciated.
Is it on the company's payroll? Are you paid for these things, or is it volunteer?
Some are things that we do automatically at our locations, so it's just part of the daily business. But when I worked in the actual corporate office, for example, we had a lot of volunteer opportunities. Now, those were offered up to salaried employees.
So you're talking time at the business?
Sure. So, there was during the holidays, they give us 6-7 different dates, and you can go help out at a food bank. You don't have to. If you want to sign up for one of those 7 dates, great. Go and do that. So completely voluntary, no pressure, nobody's keeping score, but the majority of folks obviously did it and felt great about it.
Other questions on that? The other thing that Friedman says, I'm going down the list of the article, is they should not be responsible for unemployment, curing pollution, discrimination, those kind of things. Are corporations have a social responsibility to try and cure some of the ills of society?
I believe that they do. I believe ultimately it's good for business. I think that if you do, participate with the environment, things of that nature, obviously you have to evaluate your cost. Even in the Bible, it says count the cost before you start to build. So that is the model. If they do participate in society in a way that's productive, ultimately they're going to have more consumers and they're going to be more highly touted, more valued than if they are, constant polluters or things of that nature. If they work with the community, then they're going to get more community buy-in theoretically than if they, make themselves to be a blight or a stain on the community.
Any thoughts on that at all? Okay.
Well, I guess for me, just thinking through all this, just reading about how in 1985, Whole Foods decided to put in 5% of their profits. I'm wondering what would have happened if they were not a profitable company at that time. I think if I would phrase it as if you are a profitable company, then you may want to consider social responsibility because it's an expected cultural norm to give in. But if you're a failing company, I wouldn't expect you to put it in because you do also have a responsibility to your employees, right? What good is it if your company goes down into the ground while you're trying to support some, something outside of it? An employee wouldn't understand. So, for me, I don't know how far I would take it. I think it would just depend on where your company's at, what it's trying to achieve, and if it just matches, the overall, company business. Does it add anything to the company too? So for them, it makes sense, but it may not make sense for everybody. I don't know if Ralph's would do something like this and whether it would add anything to Ralph's. It wouldn't want to make me shop there anymore. I think it'd hurt their profits. I think it's all dependent on that. But
Gabriel, you asked an important, or you made an important point. If Ralph's does something socially responsible, it's not going to make you want to shop there. If they do something socially unresponsible, would it make you not want to shop there? I'm asking from the negative perspective as opposed to...
Well, everybody still shops at Walmart, even though they do a lot of things that we consider socially irresponsible. I'm not saying that's right, but, they got the low prices. And I think Walmart kind of, disproves some of this. I'm sure there's enough niche shoppers out there that go to Whole Foods, but, just playing devil's advocate, I feel bad sometimes that I go to Walmart and buy things, even though, they're not the most social responsible company, but I have a social responsibility to to myself, to my future wife, all these things, to use our money wisely too. So
So you have multiple stakeholders there.
Yeah, so I have my own multiple stakeholders, and I just like playing devil's advocate. I don't know.
Yeah, all right. Good, Gabriel. Other thoughts?
I just want to talk about or address the idea of the social responsibility. And if I read it right, I feel like Mackey says that he wants to do things for the community and he thinks that it's right and he encourages people. But I get the sense that he really wants to do it. It's not just as TJ, the guy from Cyprus, as he says, he said that he could retitle his article, How Being Socially Responsible Helps My Bottom Line, or something like that. And I think it relates to a different topic, but in a social media class we took, we learned about how companies are having to not be jerks, or they're having to not be rude to companies. And if you go on Facebook and you go on Delta's Facebook and Delta snubs you, it's going to actually hurt their profits. And there's somebody, I forget which, I think it's American Airlines broke someone's guitar. Was that American Airlines? And then a guy wrote a song called American Airlines Breaks Guitars, and then it really hurt their bottom line. So I think companies are starting to be more aware of how their social, how if they do something that is perceived as negative, it's going to hurt their bottom line. But what we learned in that class, and I think it applies here, is that people will know if you really care. If you're just like, hey, blowing the whistle, look at me, I'm giving 5% because that's what everybody else is doing. I think that customers will pick up on that. They'll be able to see through the inauthenticity. And what I sense from Mackey though is, and I like this point, he said that if he as an investor wants to, or he says he says that the entrepreneurs have the right and responsibility to define the purpose of the company. And it's that the entrepreneur's responsibility. So if they want to do it, I think they should do it. I don't think just doing it because it looks good or is good for PR, I don't think that's the heart of what he's talking about here. And my last point is I think that as Christians, if we feel passionate kind of like Albert, I have a hard time with the responsibility, like we should do this so that we look good. I think that it should come from a deeper place, that as Christians we should have a deeper conviction that motivates us to do something beyond just boosting the bottom line.
I mean, I agree with all you just said, but I think there's a distinction on the negativity. One, all the examples you brought up were all customer service related. Now, as a customer, I definitely understand that if I'm reading reviews that, like, say, company A, broke my guitar and laughed in my face, of course, I'm going to have a negative thing. But as opposed to company A doesn't pay their employees as well, they pay them minimum wage, so I can buy a product at a lower price. That's two different items, and I think a lot of people make that distinction, right? So I could shop at a small mom and pop shop that pays their employees $12 an hour, and I can pay $2 for a roll of toilet paper, or I can go to Walmart and pay 50 cents. Well, I do feel for the guy that's getting paid $12 at the small shop. Unfortunately, I'm still going to buy the cheaper product. I think it depends where the negativity is coming from. If it's coming from customer service related aspects, I definitely understand. Like, let's look at Apple. Apple does very few social, responsible things, so to speak. I think from what I was reading recently, that they don't actually do that much relative to their size. I mean, in terms of percentage, but yet everyone's still going to buy it. So I'm still not on the whole social responsibility. I think it's a good thing if it especially helps your business. And if you do it on a personal level, that's the better part. I don't think the corporation should be pushing that out there for everybody, or pushing out that this is our whole company's view. This is all our employees do. This is all our investors use. So if the company really wants to do it, or the people on top want to do it, they should just do it themselves and allow the employees to do it themselves too. But
let me hold those thoughts. That's Michael and Carol. That's interesting because there's a discussion here whether there should be a collective type of social responsibility or individual type. Should the corporations do it or should the individuals do it themselves? And that's a interesting discussion here. In the article, Milton Friedman talks about how the tax laws are supportive of having corporations make charitable contributions. Okay, why does he say that? Does that resonate with you at all? What, if you know anything about the corporate tax laws, why is that the case?
If I understand it correctly, I'm embarrassed to go on record if I'm wrong here, but I think if the money gets paid out from the corporation, then there's double taxation, so there's less money that they could actually use versus if the corporation pays it out, there's less actual money to be used.
You're right. The double taxation of dividends would be the alternative to making social responsibility expenses, charitable type things. And then there's a deduction. Corporations can deduct up to 10% of their income for charitable contributions. But if they give it to dividends to the shareholders, it's taxed, not deducted by the corporation, which they don't like, taxed by the shareholders, which they don't like, and then there's less to be given. So I think he uses, what your word is, Milton, obscene or tax laws? He used some kind of very powerful word with the tax laws. Obviously, he's not a big tax fan, I guess. What he said, something very strange there. Anyway, but that's an interesting point. Should it be done collectively as an organization or individually? I don't know.
Going back to the original question I did have, who polices the morality aspect of, profits? So let's say that, Gabe's point is correct that I'm going to shop at Walmart versus a more socially responsible conglomerate because it's cheaper for my bottom line as individual. But then who polices the profits of the companies? Ultimately, not police is the wrong word, but if they're making, unchecked profits, and I'm thinking more of the banking industry now, where, you had derivatives and they were selling derivatives because they could. I mean, it was a way for them to make more money. They were circumventing the system that had already been put in place under the old system. And then they just started making much more money, but it was much more risky, not only to the shareholders of the corporation, but also to the individuals. And it spiraled into what we are, seeing now. So I guess my question is, obviously we're coming from a Christian perspective in here, but just in general, how do you regulate morality in the industry?
Well, that's an interesting question because when the mortgage industry went in the tank, who paid for it? We all did. Too big to fail, right? We better come up. So that's really bad. When someone in the banking industry is interesting. I used to work in the savings loan industry, and the savings loan that I worked for was making investments in restaurants. So they would get deposits and buy restaurants. And after they went down. That was crazy. Why are you doing that? Well, from a same as a loan perspective, you get deposits that are guaranteed by the FSLIC or FDIC, and you go risk your capital someplace. You hit a home run, guess what? Big bonus is big money. If we lose, oh, not my problem. Government, pay off. So there's a mismatching of risk and who's responsible for paying the loss. So that happens, and that is problematic. I think of the mayor of New York, Bloomberg. Did you see the article? He's suggesting that no one be able to buy more than a 16-ounce sugary soda in New York. Did you see that? Okay. And so there's discussions about that, and is that good or is that bad? I mean, people tell us what to drink, but you know, what happens if people drink too much sodas, they get unhealthy? Who's going to be paying for that? So that's interesting. Those are interesting scenarios when it's going to affect you. Eventually, it's going to affect you and affect your bottom line. So those are, I think, are interesting discussions there. So.
I kind of like all the topics. I mean, my perspective here, and you know, this is just kind of how it is currently, is as a Christian investor. You know, if you're invested in these companies and they're spending money on charitable, you know, organizations and they're giving their money away, I have absolutely no control over, you know, these socially, you know, their tasks or their topics, and it could be, you know, what's okay with society then, and it might be conflicting with my beliefs. So I think that the business as an entity, if I'm an investor, I should get, you know, basically for all the risk that I'm taking in investing in this company, the rewards and being able to disperse that, even if it is more double taxation, as the way I choose. And I think that, and I could be wrong, but, you know, most of the charitable contributions come from, you know, kind of the people rather than, say, all the big corporations.
Well, I think Milton Friedman asked the question, what makes you corporations so good at distributing charitable stuff? How good are you at that? You're experts at making money. You may not be doing a good job of distributing this to, and I think what happens in the business world, who do they make charitable contributions to? I'll make a charitable contribution to you so the president can be on the board of directors and can look good and go to all those social events. So it's almost buying a little. I've asked other people, how do you decide how to make charitable contributions? And they say, you know what? We have a group we make them to, and we get it done early because people are always bugging us for charitable contributions, and we say we already gave. And that's the reason we give, so we don't have to get bugged anymore. Kind of interesting, because big companies, you know, I was in a Little League trying to raise money. We'll call the big companies, hey, you want to give, going to give, going to give? And if they say no, we think, oh, yeah, that's, you know. Anyway, so.
I'm thinking, though, that the companies that you just referred to, maybe their heart wasn't in it. I mean, maybe the entrepreneurs who started that company, their sole, one of their missions, you know, part of their mission statement wasn't to contribute to charity. Maybe it was more based on profit margin. And then also as an investor, I'm guessing you're investing for a profit, not because of who the company is giving their money to. So I think the role of what foundations money should go to should be the role of the entrepreneurs. And then the role of the investors is they're in it for the money. They're not in it for the charity part.
I was just going to make a comment to your comment. I think the article talked a little bit about how investors in free markets can choose who they want to buy stocks from. And then if they decide that, I don't agree with this company for whatever actions that they did, they could sell. And so there's really that kind of checks and balances going on there, I feel like. Also, on the morality issue, I think a lot of times social responsibility is kind of forced on companies. Like, you're not a good company if you don't partake in this social responsibility because you're pursuing capitalism and profit. And I think it kind of makes capitalism and profit evil when you try to balance it with something called social responsibility, when we should really be, as Christians, redeeming this concept of profit making as something that's not evil, something that you can do without deception and fraud. And so, yeah.
That's a good point, because I think Mackey talks about that, right? Doesn't he talk about that? Profit's not bad. It does a lot of good for us. If we don't have a profit, guess what? We're not doing the things we want to do. So it helps drive their mission. And I guess he talks about having a pleasurable experience for the customers and all the stuff they do. So he's not anti-profit, is he, Mackey? definitely not.
Yeah, I kind of thought that Freeman was a little bit anti-charitable giving. It's all about profit. It's all about me. It's all about getting money. And I know that seems a little bit selfish, but then just realize that some of us as Christians and then some people as not, as an individual, they may actually give part of their money to charity. Well, why is it okay for them to give to charity, and why is he attacking, saying companies shouldn't be giving to charity? And just kind of like what people have said before, that it is, if people want to invest in the company, they know, what they're doing. They know that they're giving 5%. It's really their choice whether to invest in the company.
A couple of thoughts, some really good points. Now, you mentioned Milton Friedman's against giving. Now, I don't know that. I would say he's against corporations from giving. I think he would say, let the individual, the shareholders, decide where the money goes. So I don't think he's against giving. I think he's against corporate giving. I would say that definitely. I have no idea about that. The other thing that's interesting, I think this is very interesting. I was just reading last week a couple of things. One is I'm very happy that Whole Foods puts in this, it publicizes we're giving 5% of our profits away. That's good. If they did that and didn't tell anybody, that's a whole different deal. I'm very happy with them. If you buy stock in Whole Foods, guess what? We're giving 5% away. I'm buying into that. But if the company doesn't suggest what's going on, and there is not a lot of disclosures, corporate disclosures about where money is given charitably. I don't think you can find where they give the charitable contributions to. So maybe we need to have a more disclosures and financial statements. Where are you giving your charitable contributions to, so we know, and how much? Okay, I'm not sure it's not buried someplace, or it'd be hard to find. The other issue is there's an organization that is now trying to require corporations to disclose where they're making their political contributions to. Okay, it's a relatively new group, and it tends to be a little left-leaning, but that's okay. I think it's a good idea. More disclosure is better than less disclosure, right? Where are you giving your political contributions to? And so the thought is, hey, maybe you're bribing officials. I mean, I hate to use that word, but I think that's what happens. In fact, our friend Ben from Ben & Jerry's, have you read about what he's gonna take dollar bills and stamp on them some anti-corporate political thing, saying corporations shouldn't be able to contribute money to political to influence political legislation. So kind of interesting as you couch those all together. My theory is, and my thought is, more disclosures are better. If they disclose what they're doing and you invest in them, that's your deal. Okay? But if they don't disclose to you and we're hiding money around, and does that happen, people hide money around? Did you read the state of California in the 9/11 license plates? Did you read that story? California sells 9/11 license plates, and they raise a whole bunch of money for it. It's the vanity plate thing, I think they call it, where you pay a little extra more money for it. A bunch of the money was supposed to go to scholarships for 9/11 victims. The other was supposed to fight terrorism. Well, of the amount that's supposed to go, I think it was close to $2 million that was supposed to go to scholarships, I think $200,000 has gone. They advertise they're doing this, and they haven't given scholarship money in 7 years. The government, I won't tell you who the governor was, he'll say apolitical, borrowed $2 million from this fund to plug the California budget deficit. The next governor took $3 million away to plug something else. So when people start doing that, you get a little nervous. Corporations making political contributions or charitable contributions that are really have no business purpose. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, my thought is more disclosure is better than less disclosure. And there's not a lot of disclosure with charitable contributions or political contributions.
You know what, though, looking on the charitable side of, if you do encourage the full disclosure of who is getting that money, it might open the doors on people bugging the charities for things, or it might open that door. But
Maybe a price to pay of getting contributions, right?
yeah, but on a separate note, I was wondering what if anyone here had any strong feelings on what T.J. Rogers was saying.
We haven't mentioned T.J. very much, have we? He didn't have as much commentary in there. We didn't pay attention to TJ at all, did we? Mackey lays into him a little bit, says, "You're not making a profit anyway. See how lousy you're doing? Did you see that?"
Oh, yeah, where he says put profits first. Yeah. And the story about the semiconductors. Yeah, it was a model that essentially overall just, it imploded. And Mackey, I was going to bring up the branding point, and it goes back to that. Mackey's strategy is holistic. Basically, he's saying we have several shareholders, and each particular shareholder gets a certain part of what we're doing. It fits into a marketing strategy, which we're propelling our company to. It also, works with the investors and the other shareholders that are involved in our corporation. And basically, it's a whole machine. It's not just one particular part. And so, what I got from what Mackey said about T.J. Rogers is that basically, you're only thinking about a portion of it, and that portion of what you thought of, basically tanked the business model. It tanked the semiconductor model, where they could have maybe done something a little bit different. So,
it's almost an unfair fight. The semiconductor business is much different than the Whole Foods, so it's a little bit of an unfair fight. But I think your point is well taken. He talks in there. Rogers talks about this for-profit company is getting things produced cheaper, and if it's cheaper, more people are going to be able to use it. It's to the benefit of everybody. So there are some underlying benefits to this profit-seeking, cost reduction type of mentality, I think, is what he's trying to say. Other thoughts? Gabriel.
Well, I don't know. My thinking is, say if Cypress Semiconductor did more socially responsible stuff, I don't think it really changed anything, because at the end of the day, their core business is making semiconductors. You're comparing apples and oranges when you're saying, oh, Whole Foods is, they're socially responsible, therefore more people buy. No, people go to Whole Foods because they provided a niche product which served the clientele that they want. You have organic steaks, you have all these organic things, all these high-end products. That's their main core business, and that's why people really shop there. All right, if I asked 100 Whole Foods shoppers, why do you come to Whole Foods? I can say with almost full certainty, out of all 100 will not say, I come here because they give 5% to charity. And with Cypress Semiconductor, I'm pretty sure the reason if they're not doing well, it's not because they're not giving to some socially responsible products, because they're not producing a good semiconductor product. And they're in the tech industry. You have giants like Intel, AMD, ARM in London. I mean, you're going against behemoths. And I'm just looking on their online website. They don't look like a behemoth. And they're like a little guy trying to, it's like David versus Goliath, except they don't have the slingshot. So, I wouldn't say that the social responsibility is a cure for it. I would just say, it's a nice thing to have, but at the end of the day, it's, I agree with Albert. Responsibility is a very strong word for me, and to me, it just sounds like all companies are required to. And that's where it's really bothering me about this whole thing, is that responsibility is such a strong word. I think if individuals, like we say Christians have responsibility, yes, that's within our belief system, so I'll do it myself. But to impose that on a company where not everyone shares my belief, I have an issue with that. But
there is some benefit to that, other than just, multiple things. Did not do charitable stuff at all? They did.
No,
they
not on a large scale. I mean, like,
I think they won the award for second Harvard. I can't remember. So,
but that's the employees doing it themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think it was company sponsored. I think Rogers would say something like this: "It's good for our business because you did this." I mean, we do this because, and it's good for people to, maybe Albert can, when you went, or you didn't go, but anyway, someone else went to do the food bank or whatever else. It's kind of good to get away with the other employees, to do stuff that's kind of fun, and it helps get. Yeah. So I mean, there is some benefit to that, other than just,
Yeah, but there's no camaraderie if your company goes down and you're all in the unemployment line at the same token.
Well, you can be in the line together, but yes.
I mean, I agree that there's no camaraderie, but it's almost like saying, I've got a gun to your head and you're going to do something socially responsible. That's essentially the model that the company was kind of portraying. And a lot of companies do that. They'll say, give to United Way, and we have this United Way fund. We'll take $5 out of your check. And it's really like, if you don't do this, then politically you're committing suicide at the company essentially because you're not going to be able to promote. It's going to be looked upon as a negative on your permanent record, if you will, if you don't participate, as opposed to something that's more germane into your DNA. And that's why I heard them saying about Whole Foods. It's like the whole DNA of the company is socially responsible. We have shareholders that we all feel are valuable. So it goes beyond just altruism, which they did mention here. It goes to a place of this is part of who we are. And I think consumers are smart enough to know the difference. And I think that, if you're not authentic, then people are going to sniff that out and they're not going to buy from you.
You'd mentioned the moral aspect a little bit, and I think what Roger's mentioned there is, it says if you look at all, and this was his comment, if you look at all the bad actors in the business world, it's a small percentage opposed to other. I mean, you've got some really big name issues out there, but when you look at the whole group of people who are public companies, there's not a whole lot of them that are doing bad things. They're not all doing bad things. A very small percentage is compared to some other group of politicians. Some other groups. So anyway, I was kind of interested. I never thought of that, but there's been some, and of course the media loves to blast business, right? I mean, that's seeming to be a good thing to blast. But I thought it was an interesting point. Not percentage-wise, not a lot of people are bad actors, and they're breaking laws here. They're really breaking laws or skirting laws. And then the question is, are you breaking a law? I don't know. And then we got to go to court to decide whether you've broken a law or not. So I think that was a point that you were kind of talking about, the moral issue.
Just trying to piggyback on the previous idea of how, you're talking about just because you're giving doesn't mean that you're going to be profitable, or just because you're not giving doesn't mean you're profitable, or just because you're giving 5%, people are going to necessarily come to you. I think it's more of kind of like a backseat part. Like with the Whole Foods example, like you were saying, they come there for the organic food. They come there for, that niche market. And I think that 5% is just like a little added bonus, but it's not going to be big enough to do anything in and of itself. It has to be kind of just a little add-on to something if it's going to be used right.
If I could just make a comment about social responsibility. A lot of times I feel like we equate social responsibility with something like charity or volunteerism and those kinds of things. But I think to a certain extent, and I think the article kind of goes into this, really that social responsibility has to start internally. How you treat your employees, your vendors, your suppliers, the community that you're in, the government that you interact with taxes or, whatever. That's the core responsibility. And then anything outside of that can be considered whatever, altruism or whatnot. But there is a responsibility I feel like companies have socially to their employees who are part of communities, and how they operate and to do that excellently.
Dan, are you saying that's good business to do that, to be that way? Is that good business? To treat your employees nicely and you were talking about social responsibility inside the organization, right? Being good to your employees and doing things that's supposed to you want to compare that to, we're always talking about giving money to charities, but we can be socially responsible inside our organization. I guess my question is that good business to be that way? There's a lot of words out there, buzzwords out there. Sustainability, you're talking about long-term. What do we do with sustainability? And sometimes that has an environmental issue. So there's a lot of buzzwords out there floating around about doing good and that kind of stuff. Yes, David?
So, I completely agree with Diane that social responsibility is not just about giving, but it is about actually ethical practice in everything that we do as a business. But the term social responsibility, the thing that I want to mention is that it's more, Albert mentioned that responsibility is a strong word. I agree. And I think the social responsibility, it should have been a natural willingness as an individual and as a company. We don't even have to come up with the term social responsibility. We as a human, whether we're Christian or non-Christian, we're all created by God, and by nature, we were designed to help and give, and it's not just about us. So the term social responsibility, that term itself, it came out from sort of a reality where that giving or that heart is gone. It should have been just a natural willingness to give or natural willingness to help. The responsibility, actual responsibility, I think it is making a profit to the investors. That should have been the responsibility. Social one, that should have been the natural sort of behavior, I think. So,
and corporations don't have hearts, right? Individuals do, and corporations don't have hearts, right?
I think individuals and corporates both, because if you really think about, I'll do a little bit of a reverse thinking. So let's say the stats say that out of entire wealth in the world, maybe top 10% possess 90% of the wealth. 90% of the rest of the people, they live with that 10% of the wealth in the world. That picture is completely wrong. And that picture it just doesn't make sense. Then let's say if all the individuals, if they want to give to those people who are in need, I don't think they will oppose the idea of a company or an organization giving their profit to those in need either. If everyone wants to do that, we will not even make this argument about, everyone wants to give, but corporates cannot. People will not say that. If everyone wants to give, then any kind of organization, any kind of community will want to give. So that's my stance. And bottom line is, social responsibility, it should have been a responsibility. It should have been a natural behavior. And responsibility is making a good enough profit to the investors. And I think that should have been the responsibility. You could dump this inventory and use it for something else. In fact, you know what's going to happen. Things aren't going so well, so you're going to lay some people off. You're going to lay about 5% of your employees off. Are you better off shipping the inventory over to this organization, or are you better off dumping it for cents on a dollar so you can pay your employees? Make your choice. So let's ship them over there. And if we can't use them, let's ship them over there. Okay. Now, what's your thought on that? Is that an acceptable idea to do? You ship them over there. You're not going to get much for them. You could get some money for them if you dumped them, but you could do something good. Is that a good thing to do or not? And as you think about that, you could dump this inventory and use it for something else. In fact, you know what's going to happen. Things aren't going so well, so you're going to lay some people off. You're going to lay about 5% of your employees off. Are you better off shipping the inventory over to this organization, or are you better off dumping it for cents on a dollar so you can pay your employees? Make your choice.
Throw another wrench in it. Anybody look into Haiti? What happened in Haiti with the NGOs and the fact that they can't create an economy because people are so generous. For example, they're dumping rice. They're giving rice away for free. So there cannot be an economy of selling rice. So the supplier brings rice in, and you have like a minor supplier that buys the rice from the big supplier. And then that minor supplier then sells it to the local shops, and then the people on the street buy the rice from the local shops. Well, because there's been this dumping of free rice where you just go and stand in line and get your bag of rice for free, it's destroyed their economy. And so just on another aspect, what's happening not just to your company when you're giving it away for free, but what's happening to the economy where they're receiving it. It actually could be worse for you to give it to them for free than to help them build a sustainable economy.
Welfare state, right? Everyone.
So, anyways, that's like a micro. Anyway, just to throw that in.
Well, I'll say in that particular example, I would say first point is to take care of the company first. And then any excess, I think that's when you can start thinking about charitable contributions and donations and stuff like that. But you definitely have to take care of the company first. So it just depends on how much all that stuff costs and everything. But I also would like to think about, or even pose a question, is should corporations be responsible for utilizing the resources in their communities, the different stuff they're doing, adding pollution to the air, or just taking up space? I mean, all the different stuff. So when I think about social responsibility, like everybody's kind of comment, yeah, responsibility is kind of strong. But when I think about being responsible for what my footprint in the community, then I start thinking about, am I responsible for more than just producing a profit?
I think in your situation, I totally take care of my employees, because not only do I think that we have a bunch of stakeholders and not just one, but I don't think all stakeholders are created equal. I think they're prioritized within as well.
And how would you prioritize
To me,
those?
employees is always the first.
Customers behind?
Yes, because without a great and happy workforce, I'm never going to be able to retain that customer. If I don't retain them, I don't have the profits. I don't have the profits. My
You don't have a
investors.
customer, though, then where are you, Albert?
Say again?
If you have no customer, then where are you?
I'll have a customer. If I take care of my employees, I have a customer. So to me, yeah, you move mountains to take care of your employees. I mean, if they're wrong, they're doing unethical stuff,
And
obviously.
the thought is your employees know that, and you've got a dedicated, hardworking employee.
Yeah, they'll lay down on a train track for me when I need them, and when times get rough, they'll be shoulder to shoulder with me, right, and go through that pain with me, and not abandon me when I need them.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting question. How do you prioritize your stakeholders? When do you choose one or the other? When do you choose the investors over customers? Customers would be good for reduce your price, right? If you reduce your price, then there goes your profit margin. There's no dividends for the shareholders. So one of the arguments against stakeholder analysis is how do you prioritize them? How do you take care of them all? How do you balance them? It's almost the ways, do I go this way or do I go this way? So that becomes problematic, and that's one of the criticisms of that scenario. You have to prioritize your stakeholders and decide how much you give to all of them, right? To the community. I think Mackey's done a good job of capturing all the stakeholders, hasn't he? His little thing. So, yeah, that becomes. And his comment was, you have to balance them all together. However you do that is your job, but you got to balance them. That's what he says.
Yeah, the short answer, I think, to that question is it really depends on the situation. I think your stakeholders change depending on what you're looking at. If I feel like I'm having deja vu. Did we talk about this in ethics class?
You were talking about this, you didn't talk about this article in ethics class, did you?
No. I almost feel like I was saying the same thing in our ethics class when I was talking about stakeholders. It's it depends on what you're looking at. If I'm looking at producing maximum profit for my shareholders, or if I'm looking at polluting a city, then in that particular case, the community might take precedent over the shareholders. So I think each situation really varies. If I'm looking at, lowering prices in order to please my customers, but that means I'm gonna have to lay off 1,000 people, then in that situation, then I might put my employees might be the stakeholder that's more valuable in that situation.
I would say the pollution issue, I think polluting is against the law and should be against the law. So now you're not playing with the rules. So I think that's how I'd answer that personally. And in fact, I've heard Friedman talk about that. He thinks if you pollute the air, they attack the heck out of you because you're making a mess and you got to pay for it. So I'm hoping that things we deem unacceptable are illegal, like polluting. But then you talk about the footprint, that's a different deal because you can't, I don't know.
But then we're getting back to the rules again that, okay, the government has to be there to create the rules so that you play by the rule. Well, what if the government isn't there, not in every society? Are we talking just U.S. here? Are we talking about Africa and some other countries? Do companies have, think of the oil companies, some other major international corporations. Do they have a responsibility to act in the same way, whether it be in Tunisia or Alaska, where they don't officially have to play by the rules because the rule's not there?
Each culture has their own set of rules.
Each government, each state, anyways. And I would advocate there is something there that a corporation should be going by, whether that rule is there or not, because pollution is bad. So just because in China the rule isn't there that you don't have to pollute, you should still maybe not pollute. I mean, that's kind of how I feel. But
Yeah, so I would agree with that sentiment that, if there are no boundaries, the game's always going to be unfair. It's like, if I'm playing basketball and you can change the rim from 8 feet to 10 feet, depending on, how you feel or depending on, who's coming down the court, it's not an equal measure. And I guess that's the challenge that I have with just profit is the only thing. Making profit for the investors is the only thing, because it lends everyone to just try to do everything they can for that sole goal, and that's it. And it just kind of it just leaves everybody in a myopic place in terms of their perspective. They can't see anything else. They're only seeing this one
If you take the other side, though, doing good things for your customers, for the community, not polluting, is good for your business.
Oh, definitely.
Then I guess as we're getting short on time, I think Mackey and Friedman are coming together at an important time. They say they're not, but I think they are. I really do. I think Friedman would agree with that. It's good business to do things good for your employees, for the environment. That's good. That's good things to do. But you should measure it. How it's going to impact you, and that's very difficult to do. Should you do something that's not going to have any impact on your bottom line at all? I mean, would you make a charitable contribution, not tell anybody? I don't know. Do corporations do that? I don't know. Does Taco Bell do charitable things and not tell anybody, or inside the organization or outside?
I believe so. We're pretty public with everything.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's bad. I mean, it's you want to maximize everything you do, right? And if you get any community buy-in for it, then go for it. That's not wrong. So,
Do we have time to add? Or are we out? Are we good?
you have 5 minutes left, right?
Oh, okay. I just wanted to add something that's related to what you said. Is Mackie said that I believe there are thousands of other companies like Whole Foods that were created by the entrepreneurs with goals beyond maximizing profit, and these goals are neither hypothetical nor cloaking devices. And just reading that, I think it encapsulates a lot for me, because they have goals beyond maximizing profits. But as you're saying, if they don't have the goal of maximizing profits, they're not going to be around for long. But again, I think there's something important here with the idea of genuinely having a goal beyond maximizing profits that comes from the heart of the entrepreneur. I think there's some value in that. We had a guest speaker come in another class, and he's a Christian man, and he works in I think it's a real estate is his area. And he talked about how one of the most exciting things for him about running a company is that as a Christian person, he has the opportunity to try to create the kingdom of God on earth, or like try to bring in grace or mercy or just different elements from our faith that someone might not experience. And if he's able to extend that to an employee, he feels like that's a part of his ministry. So I think that having a goal beyond just maximizing profits, I think for it to be authentic, it has to come from, like I said before, kind of a deeper place than just, oh, it's good for business. Oh yeah, it's going to look good. And I think that's Mackey's point here, and I agree with him totally, that he just wants to help people out. It's not a cloaking device. It's not hypocritical. Yeah, I think that's the part that I agree with the most with Mackey.
Yeah, that real estate guy is talking about how he deals with people as an individual, and that's cool. That's how you should be as a Christian in the business world. That's good. That's good.
And I just think for my last thought, I'm just wondering on his corporate side, his business side, I'm pretty sure in his board meetings and stuff like this, is like, how can we make Whole Foods as profitable as possible? That's essentially doing the same thing. I mean, they're just mincing words here. I think if you're focused on maximizing profits or getting the best profits out of your company, that gives you much more on an individual level to give. Like for me, look at Bill Gates, all right? Everyone thought he was like the Antichrist when he was making all that money. All of a sudden he donates $50 billion to charity. He's like, man, he was right all along. Like everyone I talked to, they had a total shift on it, right? Now, Microsoft isn't giving it, but Bill Gates is giving it. And to me, that seems to be the better approach, because he made that money, he can give that money. Same with Paul Allen. Like, he wants to invest on something else, that's fine, or any of those guys. So I'm pretty sure what's going on in Whole Foods is they are maximizing profits, whether they want to admit it or not. In that sense, he is maximizing profits. And same with any socially responsible company, or by the term, I'm almost certain they are maximizing profits. In those board meetings, they're not like, how can we get 90% of our best profit? We don't need that 100. I just want to do 90. I'm pretty sure they're not working in that mindset.
You mentioned Paul Allen. Instead of contributing, if he invests in other businesses, is that socially responsible?
Yeah, he's creating more jobs.
More jobs that create more. I mean, you look at economies where there's no jobs, unemployment is bad. That's the worst of all, right? Is that completely the worst of all? For people not to have to work, not be able to work? That has to be horrible, I would think. And there's economies like that, where people aren't working. And anyway. Mr. Middleton, and then I have one last comment. Anybody else have a comment? I have a comment, and it's a scary comment for me, but I'll do it anyway.
And I really liked what Gabe said, and it kind of brings to the point, and Mackey talks about it in his article, why give 5%? Why not 10%, or why not 100%? And he's creating value, and he's doing 5%, it seems, of social responsibility, in order just to create the value for the company, which is essentially maximizing profit. So I think you're right, and it kind of even goes in here that Friedman kind of says profit, whereas Mackey says he's creating value, but essentially those terms kind of are interchangeable, and so I kind of think they're doing the same thing as mincing words, but really, when it comes down to it, it's that bottom line.
I like it that Mackey, I mentioned this before, but I like to summarize. I really like that he lets everyone know we're giving 5%. No hiding, we're doing this. If you want to be part of my team, buy my stock. If you don't. I like that. I really like that. This is my mission. This is what I'm doing. So get on board or get out. Now, some of you have taken the ethics class here in the MBA program. Can you summarize? Yeah, you must have talked about this topic in there a little bit. You guys talk about this at all in there? I mean, you must have. This is kind of scary for me to have. Your professors were Scott Ray and Tom Wilson? Boy. Any conclusion? Pretty heavy-duty guys. Any conclusion? They talk a lot differently than discussion was in here. Similar? Help me. I want to get a class of education without having to take the class. Come on, you got 2 minutes to tell me what.
I think for the most part it's somewhat similar, but I think the main thing that I've been getting out of there so far is that it's not just enough to obey the law. Like, personally, we should have some type of moral compass to that. Just obeying the law is not good enough.
And that becomes problematic if you're working for a company that says they do something illegal. That's where you draw a line. And I've been in situations where, hey, do this tax return, we'll do it for the lender. So I'm not doing that. And I actually confronted the guy and said, hey, I'm not doing that. Do you remember that client you had that had 2 different tax returns, one for the lender and one for the tax return? What do you think of that person? Oh, they're scummy. You want to be like that? Oh, no. So they changed their mind. I mean, so sometimes you have to confront, I'm not doing that. And I'll tell you why. Because you think it's scummy, and I don't want you to, I'm not going to be part of your scummy deal. And I've had people walk out of my office, said, I'm not doing that on your tax return. I'm not doing that. All right, leave. Basically saying, will you cheat for me? I said, no. No, well, bye. I have no problem with that at all. A low business. Don't need it. Don't need that.
If I could just mention, I think something that Joaquin said was that we should have a higher moral compass. And I think that's something that resounds for me as a Christian, is that whether we say we're maximizing profit or we're doing something from a pure place in our heart matters. Maybe not necessarily in our business, but in the end, not to be dramatic, but I think God's going to judge our hearts. He's going to judge what we did. And if everything that we did in our company was to maximize profit, and we didn't have that actual heart, if we gave to the poor because we thought that would maximize profit and not because we actually felt compassion in our heart towards them, then I think that God's going to judge us based on our heart as well. So we have an additional higher standard than just the worldly standard.
But don't lose sight of individual responsibility and corporate responsibility. I mean, individually, and the question is, corporately, how do we handle it? So that's where it gets tricky. I mean, there's no question about it. As a Christian, we ought to be charitable, right?
Just on that last point that you just brought to my attention, though, I mean, you have organizations that are very successful with that same principle. I mean, you look at Chick-fil-A. Christian principles on an individual level, but bringing it to a corporate level where they abide by that, and that's their staple. In-N-Out does the same thing. So I guess my point to what you were saying is that the individual behavior is the culture and the DNA of the organization. And if we really believe that, if we really truly believe that as Christians, then we can change the world. Because people would see a total difference. But if all we see is, oh, Christians do the same thing as everybody else, well, what's the point? I can just, do what I want.
Hopefully people know where you work that you're a Christian. If not, that's not good. But Chick-fil-A and open on Sunday, you can't make profit. I don't care. Good for my employees, good for everybody else. I'm not going to do it. I don't think it's right. Okay, that's great. The owners decided that. If I invest in Chick-fil-A, guess what? I know. I open on Sundays. In-N-Out, Bible verses on the cups? You kidding me? Does that hurt their profits at all? No.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.